So I just wanted to say welcome to the people who've joined our session so far, and I wanted to be able to share with people information about a new programme that we are running. So this is just a short introduction really on what this Ellii programme, and we're only calling it that because I can't think of a better name of it, and maybe on the programme we'll come up with a better name. But in essence, so I'm Nicola. I'm one of the directors of Flourish Together, and we're an organisation that supports women to lead the change they see needed in communities. And we're ultimately a pay it forward consultancy that supports social enterprises, charities, public, private, and other organisations to strengthen their capacity, their operations and their social value. But through doing that, we spend a lot of time listening and we invest our profits in supporting women as a force for social change. And whether it's through our peer learning and networking programs that we've done over the last 8 years, enterprise and leadership programs we've run over the last 8 years, or some research I'm just going to mention in a moment, listening to the needs of our communities, particularly women in our communities, women of all backgrounds, very diverse backgrounds. And through the pandemic, if I'm honest, having seen, as somebody's recently said, feels like we've taken a step back, feels like we're exhausted, feels like there's a lot of pressure on people, feels like there's not really much light at the end of the tunnel, and all of this, be it COVID, be it budget cuts, be it all sorts of other challenges that we're facing at the moment. Women facing the brunt of some of that in their own lives and through the work that they're doing, and especially if they're running support organisations. It felt for me for some time there's like a ticking time bomb. I even wrote in the policy report recently. Whether that will get listened to, I don't know, but ultimately we're wanting to design and develop a programme that's going to support women as a force for social change, and particularly those in the women's support sector. So I'm going to just talk briefly about what this programme is all about. But in essence, we're trying to develop the enterprise or some enterprise learning or business acumen in the women's support sector, leadership knowledge, skills, and networks. Really harness and highlight and showcase some of the amazing innovation that happens, led by women in the women's support sector, in the social enterprise and sort of wider voluntary community sector, that people don't always call innovation, but it is innovative and it is radical, and more people need to understand and respect the innovations that come from the work that we all do, and ultimately develop our influencing skills. So that and the goal, in whatever, Rome wasn't built in a day, but I think between sort of now and the next 12 months, which is where we know we've got some time and some energy and some resources to throw at this, we'll seek to build the capacity and sustainability of the women's support sector. Ultimately, we're looking, I hate putting a number on these things, but in terms of our capacity and what we can realistically do, we know that we've got a kind of 6 to 9 months programme designed for people to do and develop in all of these ways, and we think we can support around 20, maybe up to 30 women's support organisations. I think we're going to get overwhelmed, if I'm honest, from conversations I've had already, but I'm not someone that likes to turn anyone away, and there will be various online resources, there will be blogs, there will be podcasts, there will be events. So I think we'll impact more than the people we can physically work with as a kind of group. And ultimately, we don't want to close doors to people. We want to build wider alliances and wider networks that connect well to each other. So we're just gauging interest at the moment, and we'll sort of firm up our sort of plans as we go in terms of numbers of who we support. Why this programme, why now? So I'm not expecting you to read this. This is just to give people a sense of clearly Flourish has been supporting women as a force for social change for the last 8 years or more. We've got a network of over 750 women change makers that we've developed. They're not all working in the women's support sector. And if I'm being totally honest, I didn't know what the women's support sector was. I didn't know what a women's centre was properly, officially, until about, less than a year ago. Although we work with a lot of women, we just do it. And it wasn't until 10GM came to us last sort of summer-ish to say, there's this piece of commissioning, small piece of commissioning, the GMCA are trying to you know, do some consultation work. We think you'd be well placed to do this with your networks, blah, blah, blah. So we kind of put together a proposal to talk to people. And I guess they thought, oh, you know, how many people will we get to? What will really happen? But we really kind of, because it was so important, in spite of being incredibly busy at the time, we thought we've got to kind of do this, partly because we wanted to showcase more grassroots women support organisations and some amazing women change makers that we work with, and very diverse women change makers. And I mean that from ethnicity, sort of cultural background, sexual orientation, whether people have got sort of you know, health needs, wider sort of setbacks and challenges that they have. There's a whole range of people that we support, and because we aim to support women with lived experience to really change their world and the world of others for the better. We were seen as being a good group of people to come to do this. And, you know, we just happen to have really good local, regional and national networks. We're not afraid of you know, asking difficult questions and giving people the time and space to find things out that perhaps some commissioners might not have had the opportunity to fully find out. And to be fair, there's consultations on consultations. We all know this. People get consulted to death and the action doesn't fully connect and move where it needs to. But I think there was definitely, as much as they've done a lot of consultation work, and there were already some great reports that had been done, and we've highlighted many of them locally, nationally, and regionally in this report, in addition to, you know, as part of a desk-based research, to highlight other good stuff out there that we need to learn from and act upon, most importantly. We could see that the needs for people from you know, Black, Asian and other culturally diverse backgrounds, the needs of people from organisations like Tina's just spoken about, with the sort of LGBTQ plus organisations and networks were falling through the cracks of support that was out there, along with young women, along with people with disabilities. There were just some key areas as well. People affected by you know, child sexual exploitation. There was a whole range of people who we were able to reach out to, in addition to who they were already trying to engage with through the women's centres that are currently commissioned, and through looking at women who are perhaps coming into contact with the criminal justice system, which was part of this research. And we did a really broad brush sort of exercise to pull people in and really talk about some difficult things, to see, you know, what are the issues and what do we need to do. And basically that's what this research is born of, having engaged with over 200 women in spite of the pandemic as us all being locked down, and having a kind of round table event that, you know, 8 or 9 women showcased their perspectives and we had about 14 focus groups, and, you know, there were about 80 women support organisations that we mapped, you know, in a couple of months, and that's, you know, barely scratching the surface, if I'm honest. And, you know, that's alarming in itself, that there's so many of them. How are they all going to, you know, sustain themselves? But also there's a reason they're set up, you know, they're not you know, and so we need to explore that, and we need to help connect people, and to look at what's you know, financially viable, and as people have got the energy to sustain. So there were various things that alarmed us, I guess, when we did that research, and some of it, you know, some of these pinch points that we've got here, and lack of awareness of what's physically out there. Nobody knows who's who. People are not great at promoting themselves necessarily. Even the agencies, the large agencies that have been running for some time, you know, are saying exactly the same things to us as some of the grassroots organisations, in terms of being exhausted, needing time to really work on the business rather than in the business or the organisation, governance, sustainability, diversifying income, all of these things that people know they need to do, but they're not necessarily quite sure how. And so we felt, rather than just keep running more social enterprise support programs or more support for, you know, all sorts of social enterprises, we take not a year out, but a year of focus, where we really try and support women support organisations to make them more sustainable, and to really develop the leadership confidence, hopefully, and influencing power where we can, around this sector that was kind of, you know, really you know, in need of that support. So in terms of will it be right for you, there's no kind of right or wrong place to start from with this. We would suggest people might be some sort of you know, leader of an organisation. There might be an employee or a volunteer within an organisation in Greater Manchester, or they might be you know, initially starting and developing their own initiative. from what we're hearing, people we're talking to, there's people that have been going sort of 0 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 10 years plus. And it's our intention to find people that have, you know, are working in different ways at different stages of development of their organisation. We can support people at the kind of early stage, as well as the kind of middling and sort of, you know, scaling or, you know, longer term legacy building style of organisation. And we'll tailor the programme and some of the support and some of the kind of action learning that we might build into this in order to make sure that people are working with people in a similar position to them, but also really mixing up contacts and connections so that lots of good peer support happens. Wow, how do you spell strategic? Not like that. And then you'll also be able to look at really interesting and dynamic collaborative opportunities by having a really broad range of people there. What we really look, there's a lot of people just don't know each other exists, so we really want to make it possible to raise awareness. As we've been talking to people recently, you know, they have been telling us, you know, they're wanting to, you know, build their sort of personal to strategic leadership skills, organizational development, really build the sustainability of their organizations and think about how they diversify their income streams, because funding alone will never sustain an organization. Plus it's shrinking, it's competitive, it's exhausting. As I mentioned, looking at how we can help people develop their networks for various reasons, for peer support and to find their tribe, to promote and raise awareness of what they're doing, collaborate and co-design new initiatives and more strengthened stuff, reach wider audiences or more diverse audiences. And ultimately, we would really like to be able to use this as an opportunity to influence whatever we can, whether it's policy, whether it's the way things are designed, however which way you want to do that, we're there to facilitate what we can. So just quickly, what's included, and people who are interested can get you know, a kind of background overview document of the dates, or the dates as they're forming, and an expression of interest form around this. But the plan is there's a bunch of learning and development and I guess technical training. We know we've got budget at the minute to run these. So we've designed a kind of some immersion and kind of onboarding stuff where we get people who have got great skills in facilitating thinking around leadership and helping you, I guess, clear your mind and see how you've got to this point and where it is you're trying to go, and really look at how you look after yourself in order to, you know, envision your ideas or grow your organizations, depending on what people are doing. So there's some really important stuff to do at the start around looking at getting people on board and then thinking about how to be sort of resilient, authentic and effective leaders, because whether you feel like that or not, that's a big part of what running, you know, women's organisations, social enterprises, charities is all about, and cross-sector understanding and cross-sector networks and cross-sector thinking. Then we've got looking at, you know, thinking about what are these problems and these challenges and these, you know, nightmares in some cases that everybody's trying to work with and support and develop solutions around, and really think about mapping and spotting what people are doing in similar ways, differently, where the gaps are, and just help us at the start of the programme, as well as understand where you feel you are and where you're thinking is at a point of leadership and your skills and needs. Also looking at the same time at what some of these potential influencing challenges or you know, opportunities for change, where these things are, so that we can really help collaborations form, and it will help us later on in the programme, as you'll see. So that's where we get to by the end of the year. We'll be looking at where you're at as a leader, what are the challenges that you're trying to really look at, and think about, you know, your organisational focus and thinking about, you know, diversifying income and looking at what sustainability can look like. We'll also spend some time looking at organisational governance, because although some people have got, you know, we'll have people who have both set up organisations and are kind of grappling with getting their governance and their board working well, working smoothly, being diverse, being effective. But there'll also be people who are at the start of things who've perhaps haven't developed that yet. And so we'll be looking at supporting people along that part of the journey. A big part of what we're trying to help people to do, and don't get me wrong, you don't crack this in a day, is looking at sort of business models, planning, and financial sustainability. We've got these days here, like I say, there's one around theory of change, social impact and value measurement is a huge part of what people and organisations do in the women's support sector, either because they have to, they want to, they need to, or they haven't recognised quite what and how they need to do this yet in order to do it well and to make it work, so that they secure those funding bids, they get commissioned, they've got the right communications, and can really, you know, shout about some of the important things that they are doing, or that needs doing, and how people's lives are changing as a result of the work and the organisations that you all run. And then we've also got stuff around media communications and PR that we're doing. So there's a kind of series of technical workshops, and then, you know, budget permitting, you know, and we are looking at still for additional partners and additional resources to make sure we can make this as an enriching programme as we can. All being well, we will be including as a minimum action learning groups as a form of peer support and knowledge and thinking and connection building around this. And in addition, although I've got to find the budget for this yet, finding some budget and some ways of providing some additional coaching support or additional intensive sort of enterprise development support. That's what takes the money sometimes and is labour intensive on a one-to-one, but that's what gets certain things just done, say certain headaches away, get certain reports and pieces of work out the way. And we've got a brilliant team of associates who what they can't do and what they can't sort when it comes to bid writing, governance development, business planning, you know, procurement forms, and you know, social value measurement. You know, there's a really strong team in there, along with some great sort of financial planning people. So depending on where people are at, we've got different things we can bring in depending on what we've got resources to do. Some of that might be covered through funding, some of that might be that organisations at the larger end of the spectrum buy this stuff in if there's specific things people need, and wherever possible we'll be looking for additional resources to subsidise the costs of some of that. So that's the kind of the learning, development, technical training bits. And then when we get into the new year, a bit further into spring, we're really hoping to encourage people that we're working with to collaborate. We're not going to force this, you can't force collaboration, but what we're thinking is helping people look at how we can use our collective knowledge and our wider networks and other people to do some innovative events. We've got a track record of running all sorts of types of events, social innovation thinking events, and participatory budgeting, where if we've got resources and we collectively think about what's the best way to spend this money, and have people sort of pitch for support, whether that's mentoring or cash to invest in collaborative projects. I will be honest and say this is quite small scale cash at the moment to create things like events that need to happen, or focus groups that need to happen, or podcasts, or the basic graphic design or polishing of tools and resources that need to be created in order to improve whatever communications, showcase things, have important conversations, hold conferences, whatever. But there's some resource and some space, most importantly, to create the thinking around all sorts, whether it's improving people's businesses and strategies and the way they communicate and the way they market themselves, or whether it's co-designing, collectively putting new tools and resources together. And we're really keen that we'll be able to support people to create some other kind of collaborative events and design what else and what next, and really give us some focus to help work collaboratively and not be all things to all people, and leverage and use the resources that we've got in a smart way, so that really impactful things happen and legacies get built. And so that's the kind of the elements of the programme. I was just going to say, if people are hearing this and they want to come and find out more, or they've got questions, they can email us, or they can come to a physical event where we've got these via Eventbrite. There's a bundle of how this programme's being backed at the moment. So Flourish are putting some of their own sort of time and resources into this. We've got support from a WEA programme where we've got those people who are perhaps currently volunteering their socks off, currently unemployed, and looking at developing this organisation of theirs, or that they're running into a sort of viable employment opportunity for themselves and others, or just a sustainable organisation. So currently funding for women that are currently unemployed. We're being supported by NatWest in a couple of ways at the moment, and there's some resources there to help with a wider. And then there's a bunch of other things that we will look at, trying to secure over the coming months to kind of bolster and strengthen what we're doing. But those are some of the funders that we've got at the moment. And there's an ask there that if people are listening to this and they know that, this is an important topic, and they might have resources to help support this, match fund things, co-deliver events, co-deliver research and policy work, or need to commission stuff that needs to be done to help deliver with their own outcomes, we're always up for weaving budgets together to make them work better and more effectively. So do get in touch on that. And that really is just brings me to the end of the sort of presentation part, where it's giving you a flavour of what we're doing. And I hope it's been of interest, and that people will get in touch, express their interest. And we've got a really interesting cohort of people and organisations to start with come September, October, when we aim to kick everything off. So I'm going to hopefully hear from people soon.